And
Must have been that Cambridge influence.
And then was that really a concept record?
No, well, sonically.
It had 3 or 4 songs.
Sonically, it was a concept.
Because Wright had put together Us and Them, and then they had also put together Waters had put together the Brain Damage Eclipse bit.
Right.
And On the Run was kind of woven in and out, and of course, Great Gig was basically an improv from the singer.
Wait,
yeah.
Talk about nailing it, huh?
Yeah, they kind of grabbed her and said, "Hey, come on in and do this."
And then,
you know, it worked out well.
That was a great Headphones album, but I always preferred, because the first time I ever heard it was in Headphones, Wish You Were Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite Floyd album, that or Metal. And you had to play it backwards. You had to play side 2 first, and then play side 1.
On Metal?
No, on Wish You Were Here.
Put
because you had to get ready for the machine, which is side 1.
So then you play Shine On You Crazy Diamond parts 6, 7, 8, 9 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah.
I've never done that.
Yeah. That's interesting.
That's a strange one.
Wonder why they sequenced it the other way then.
There were a lot of drugs. they didn't know what they were doing.
Not really, no. It's funny because, you know, they weren't really...
Was it just their fan base that they were appealing to?
And their fan base, of course, you know. But they weren't really heavy duty. You know? I mean,
because there's
you
a
find a lot
notorious
of those bands that were from the 60s that were into that in the 60s.
Right.
Really just kind of stopped after a while because it just didn't work for them anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, they got to the point where
We've already talked about a lot of the ones who didn't on this show.
Yeah.
So, well, you know, maybe that explains why they're still
Why
around.
they're still around, yeah. Yeah, of course, Pink Floyd. Everybody knows Pink Floyd. And,
there's a notorious version of a live Dark Side of the Moon recorded in England, and I can't remember the club, but it was labeled Mind Fry.
Oh. Never heard it.
But that's a very frequently bootlegged performance.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows Dark Side of the Moon, and that's what took them off.
Wish You Were Here, too. Everybody knows that. Although, see, long songs didn't get a lot on the record. Was it...
Have a Cigar
Have a Cigar,
got
there we go. And Roy Harper. Hats off to Roy Harper. Didn't he do the vocal?
Zeppelin.
Well, didn't Harper do the vocal on Have a Cigar? Yes, he did.
That's right. He did.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's why it got sung instead of it got spoke.
I had forgotten completely about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they brought him in to sing, and I think Waters takes that one in concert. Because I saw the Animals tour, which had Animals was played, and then Wish You Were Here, and then they did an encore from either Us and Them or Money, that kind of stuff right towards the end. And so that was a good tour, because Animals is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, going back to Wish You Were Here, which was the previous one, I think most Floyd fans know it, of course, but Wish You Were Here is basically about Sid.
Who walked into the studio.
Yeah, and didn't even recognize
No,
him.
yeah, he didn't. They didn't even really recognize
each
him.
other, and he was in for just a little bit. He gets nervous because they tried to get him out for a number of times for solo records, and he's just
Madcap Laughs.
And Opal and the other stuff. He just does not do well around those circumstances. And his mother's, he basically stays at home. He still lives with his mother. He's like 60 some odd years old now, and he just putters around in the garden. And
well, there's one of those ones that you have to play backwards, and it says something about from Chalfront. It's Old Pink. This is a message from Old Pink at Chalfront.
That would be one of their later albums.
That was in the wall.
Yeah, Shine On You Crazy Diamond was for
the wall?
Sid.
I've heard of that.
It's a possibility that they did that, but
I think it said please send. You found the mystery question. Please send your answers to Old Pink, and there was that backward masking.
Oh yeah.
You had to play the damn record backwards, and there was hints on the radio about where it was, and some people thought it was going to be like some sinister, arcane reference and stuff. And they're just wondering, how Sid's doing.
Well, just now, do you know the origin of Pink Floyd? The name?
No, I don't.
Two blues players.
Two old blues players.
One guy named Pink
Anderson and Floyd Council.
Floyd, yeah.
So, together, boom, Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
I thought it was the barber on Mayberry RFD.
Yeah,
Or, the Andy Griffith Show. That's it.
Yeah, Pink Floyd, The Blushing Barber. No. So yeah, Wish You Were Here is also the point where there started developing some problems within the band.
There was
You
a
mean
rift.
the control that we were talking about previously
Yeah.
with Mr.
See,
Waters?
what happens when you have one real big success for which you are a primary writer for, it kind of goes to your head.
You think?
Yeah.
God,
And,
good thing that didn't happen to like
and
any
that's
other
when it
bands.
started a little bit with Roger and his control of the band.
Yeah. Well, because see, I always figured that Dark Side and Wish You Were Here were big Dave records, and if you notice when they moved into Animals, that was a Roger.
That was almost a complete.
That whole second side, the acoustic song at the beginning and the end, and then the second half of Dogs.
And the whole concept of Animals anyway.
Right. Well, that was when he
And
started
why were
getting
there
pissed
three
off at
different
society.
pigs? There was the straw pig, there was the brick pig, and
No, there was Mary Whitehouse, and there was Police Chief Ed Davis, who did a bunch of busts at the L.A. shows. He went and busted everybody, and he's one of the pigs in there. And Mary Whitehouse, of course, hated Pink Floyd, and so she kept
Now, who was
slagging
she?
him. She was a writer that was really into censorship and stuff, and so she started slagging Pink Floyd, and
And
basically.
there's so many much better bands to slag if you're going to slag somebody.
Well, what would you get them for? I guess the drug use at their shows.
Probably. Because
Yeah.
it wasn't anything. I mean, yeah, Roger had a couple
Well,
of
but
bad
good thing
words
she
every
put a
once in
stop to
while.
that.
See,
huh?
Animals had pigs, which were the big dominant one, and then the dogs were all the businessmen. And you read that little 13-line piece about being dragged down by the stone and everything, and that gets going. And
Because
then,
it is
and then the sheep
easier
are the
to
rest of
pass
us.
a
Yeah.
needle through the eye of a camel than,
A rich man to enter through the gates of heaven.
well, something like that.
Yeah. But the thematic idea of society being split up into various groups of animals, that's Roger.
The sheep are just the people that go along with everything.
Right.
We're all sheep.
Right.
We're jumping off the cliff like a bunch of lemmings.
Did they do one about goats?
And this is where, and this is where, Roger really started going off the deep end with his
Right.
whole concept.
Well, he'd had his
Everything
father's
had to be a
death.
concept.
He'd had his father's death in World War II, and all of a sudden, then they go off and he writes pros and cons, and he writes The Wall, and he brings them both in.
I
And
thought
he-
Michael Jackson wrote The Wall.
That's off the wall.
That's off the wall.
Off the wall.
Now my confusion, I didn't understand. I kept hearing about this record. And was it any good?
Off the wall?
No, The Wall.
No, I don't know.
Oh, see, now I like The Wall. Now that's where you guys can gang up on me.
Well,
because
there's also partial. Remember what the impetus for The Wall was when he was out touring Animals.
right, Montreal show.
He got so disgusted with the audience and the fact that they weren't paying attention, and that he felt so disconnected from them. These huge stadium shows.
And they were loud during like the soft stuff, this Wish You Were Here
Yeah,
stuff. The
it was
audience
just,
was going
party,
nuts.
party.
Which is why Bob Geldof shaved off his eyebrows. Right?
And it led to a point where at one point Roger actually started spitting at fans.
Ew.
Oh, he gobbed a guy in the face who
Yeah.
crawled up to the.
Did he think he was like a punk or something?
And he started, spitting on him and hated him and, hated the fact that he was so disconnected from him. So with that disconnect, he really started feeling like there was a wall in between.
Yeah, between him and the audience, and so he just built the damn thing. Now that was a tour that I was fortunate enough to see. I mean, there were what 28 shows, and they did a bunch at the
They did
sports arena.
what, like-
in Los Angeles,
In New York?
New York, London, and then
I was gonna
eventually
say, they only
Munich.
did a handful in the U.S.
Yeah, they did like 9 or 10 in New York, and then 9 or 10 in L.A. were the first ones. We went to the fourth show, and they built the wall so you couldn't see them the first half of the show. And then the second half of the show, they did a lot of animation They actually opened up the wall, and there was water sitting there.